Hi, I'm Josh Nelson with Nelson Elder Care Law, and we are blessed to have Kelly with us today. She's the owner of Oasis, and she's going to tell us where she comes in to really help families that are somewhat traveling in that desert to find that respite and that care that they need. So thank you so much for joining us today, Kelly.
Thank you for having me, Josh. I'm super excited to be here. I'm really happy to explain to you what I do, and then really a fun project that I've been working on for over the last year.
That's awesome. We're excited to hear about that. But before we start getting into all those details, our viewers just need to know first who you are. So you've been in the senior industry for a few years now. You're the owner of Oasis. Tell us how this got started. Kind of what's your origin story, or how did this become your niche?
So about 5 years ago, I lost my dad to Alzheimer's. In 2019, he was 72 years old, so kind of a surprise, but not really. Having navigate that space as an adult child with my siblings and my mom was just really challenging. It left quite an impression on all of us. And so fast forward in 2021, when I started thinking about a career change, I knew I wanted to do something to help families navigate all of the resources. So I kind of stumbled upon Oasis Senior Advisors and haven't looked back.
Well, and I think that's the story that so many of us have, right?
Indeed.
Somebody close to us goes through something that's really traumatic, and unfortunately we feel like we don't have a guide. We feel like we don't have somebody to really let us know not only what's available, but how we get access to it. And whenever you're in a crisis, you're helping your family member go through that, you really don't have time to just go Google stuff.
Right.
So often whenever families come in and work with us, they're overwhelmed. And I think that's where you and Oasis really can come in to help. And a lot of people don't really understand how, Oasis is a placement company, but what does that mean? So whenever we talk about the resources available, where do you guys really add the most value?
Yep. So how I like to explain it, Josh, is I am the chauffeur to all of the resources to the family. Moving or not moving really is only one challenge that they face. I like to think of myself as the subject matter expert in all things senior living, but my biggest connection for people and families is to connect them with other resources, to elder care law, to home care if they want to try that route, hospice should they need, home health, all of the things that are, I like to think, in my toolbox that I can connect families. So chauffeuring them to each of those resources and helping address as many of those challenges as I can.
And I think that's one of the things that really sets you and Oasis apart, though, is you have some competitors that are a little bit bigger out there,
Sure.
but they have kind of a bad reputation. And what that reputation is for is first not giving the individualized care, but more so just the lack of privacy. So many families, whenever they're first Googling this or they're first going and searching, they put their information into this big database, and then their phone rings constantly for days. And if you're already in overwhelm, that's too much.
Oh, yeah.
All of a sudden, all these unknown numbers, they pick up, they kind of hound you a little bit. And I think that that's one of the big misconceptions that people have, is because that's what they hear the experience is. But if they work with somebody like you and Oasis, one of the things that really impressed me was the amount of privacy you take.
Yep,
So
absolutely.
even whenever you're helping guide these or chauffeur the people to the resources, really you're doing so in a way that protects their privacy, their personal information. Some of the times we have things going on with our family members, especially with Alzheimer's, that maybe we don't want to put into a web form. Maybe there's things that feel shameful or embarrassing for our loved ones that we don't want to share with everybody like that.
Yep.
And I think that's the thing that really sets Oasis apart in my mind, is that personalized care with the privacy. It feels like a more done with you rather than done at you kind of process.
I protect my family's information. I often say that I am their liaison between the family and any resource that I share, that I pass messages and phone calls and all that. And then, of course, when it's time for the family to connect with a resource personally, I, of course, get their permission. The great thing is that we are 100% HIPAA compliant, so my email is secure, my database is secure, and I take that very seriously. I do not want to share information without their permission.
I think that liaison, as you talked about it, is something that people that haven't gone through it probably undervalue. You just have so much on your plate whenever you're a caregiver or the lover of somebody that's going through these journeys as we get older. And it's frustrating whenever you sit down just for that couple minute break that you get
Sure.
And all of a sudden it's just bzz, 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 bzz.
Constant.
So really love that about what you do. And I think that you provide a lot of value, not only in that, but in some other ways. And that brings up one of the questions that people always kind of ask us is, whenever we were referring to a placement agency, they're like, well, how much does that cost? We just paid the lawyer a bunch of money. What's next? These assisted livings, these independent livings, they cost a lot. How much is this going to cost us? And what's the answer to that?
Yep. So I addressed that question very early on in my discovery calls. Our service is 100% free, regardless of if the senior moves into a senior living community or not. I am always happy to share resources. It is my goal to make sure that they leave me better than they found me. And so I often will explain it as I'm kind of a real estate agent for seniors. So, and that's really kind of a layman's term where should we find a best fit community and your loved one moves to that community pays me a referral fee. What I love, though, that I think sets me apart is I don't end the relationship there. I want to know how your loved one is doing. I want to make sure that they're being well cared for and that all of the things, the book of sale is good. And ultimately, they may need more resources down the road. Like I said, referencing back that one challenge they may have other things that pop up. So I want to be able to stay connected with those families and continue to be a resource for them.
Love that. I do want to make the caveat on that analogy, though. Your realtor cannot do this.
Yeah, right, yes.
A lot of times, whenever realtors get involved, sometimes they kind of have that blood in the water about listing of a home. Mm-hmm. They don't do what Kelly does.
Right.
So,
it's much more personalized, and it really focuses on the needs and the care and what those loved ones need.
Awesome. I think one of the things that people often ask, too, is, like in Cherokee County, there's over 30 properties that could be a possible fit for people. You go into Cobb, it's even more. The further and further you geographically expand, the numbers just get crazy.
Yep.
You can look at Google reviews, you can look at Ombudsman's reports, you can look at all this stuff, but it's really, really hard for somebody to figure out what's really a good fit. Yep. And so I know at Oasis you have a really cool process to help narrow that down. So it's not like the realtor taking you around to every house on MLS.
Right.
It's saying, what are you really looking for? What fits you? Kind of walk us through that process.
Yep, absolutely. So I really get to know the family very well. I want to know where, obviously geographically, where they want to live. It's really important with with Atlanta being, traffic and things. And then what their care needs are, where their budget falls, because that's really important. I don't want to show them something that's out of budget. And then really, what are their social expectations? Are they a very social person? Are they looking for something with a very robust social calendar? I typically share between 3 and 5 communities with each family initially. I tell them that if I've done my job well, then we've usually done well and we can find a community that fits within that 3 to 5. If not, we can certainly add more. But what I don't want to do is show them every community on every street corner because you're not going to remember. And we need to find, what is the differentiator between those communities. And if I've done my homework well, I can usually nail it down pretty well between 3 and 5.
Yeah, and I think that it's the kind of thing that you're not wasting everybody's time, right? So there's different communities that are a better fit based on care needs or socialization needs. Again, budget plays into that, and we'll talk about that here in kind of the next question. But just figuring out first, do you want to be in one of these like cruise ships on land that are multi-stories and have activities going on every day? Or are you the kind of person that appreciates more of a ranch style, fewer rooms, knowing your caregivers a little bit more, but maybe not having access to the field trips or the activities, things like that.
Yep.
And a lot of people think that there's a big price discrepancy between the two, and often there isn't.
No.
It's just a different style.
Yep.
So if your parent or your loved one's coming from more of a conservative environment, they weren't as social, it might be a lot for them to take on all of a sudden having all this stuff going on.
Yeah, this pressure.
Where if you go to a smaller community, a lot of times it's a better fit. I think either way, the socialization helps a lot, and that's where you guys can come in to help. A lot of times people feel a fear or a worry that you're going to end up getting them something more than they can afford. And I think that's one of the things that sets Oasis apart with some of the budgeting and working with your partners to do that. But what people are afraid to talk about is that by having kind of the heels on the ground and being able to go talk with these communities in such a restricted area geographically, you know the deals. It's not just a take it or leave it a lot of times with these kind of rental rates or these occupancy rates. If a community tends to have more people or less people, sometimes they're a little more flexible with what those rates are. And that's not something you're getting from a website. That's not something that you're getting just from calling a number. I think that that's really helpful. And you've worked with some of our families to give them really deals we thought were impossible. So whenever you start talking about something like a memory care, generally people are thinking that's $6,500 or so a month. And you've been able to work with some of our families to really get that in a way that they have a balanced budget or a very small shortfall between their income and what they're spending. That makes a huge difference on the family's stress level. Usually whenever we talk memory care, like with your father, sometimes there's a well spouse that still has to figure out how they're going to pay for their stuff. And so by planning that out and finding those deals where we're getting the care we need, we have the safety, but then we also have a budget that works. Right. I mean, those are the stories that are just amazing. Yeah. So I really appreciate what you do there.
Thank you.
What else should we know about Oasis that we don't know yet?
Well, so I live and work in the territory that I own. So again, very boots on the ground, personalized approach. I truly love working with these families. I get very connected to them. And something that I didn't really anticipate, truth be told. I felt like I had kind of lived through my dad passing from Alzheimer's and thought, I can handle it. But you really connect with families, and it's heartbreaking sometimes to watch the journey that they're on. But it's a journey I would not change for a bit.
Yeah, it's a weird mix of emotions because you're seeing people that are leaving their home, but leaving in a way that's celebratory, leaving in a way that feels like this is the right path. Yeah. And I think that's what you and Oasis really do a great job on.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So I'd love to hear more about this new project you've been working on.
Yes, so about a year in the workings, I guess. My co-coordinator, Christian Caswita, and I have started ACAP, Cobb and Cherokee, and that's Adult Children of Aging Parents, which many of us fall in that category, of course myself and Christian as well. And it is truly a labor of love. It is a nonprofit organization where we are in the community serving Cobb and Cherokee counties with programming and resources for the adult children. Of course, any family caregivers are always welcome, but this really focuses on giving tools and resources to family caregivers. And we meet once a month, and we are really excited about being a part of the community.
Where do you guys meet at?
Yep, Covenant Presbyterian Church in Marietta on Canton Road. We meet every third Thursday of the month at 6:30 p.m. We've got our March program coming up on March 21st.
Awesome. Sounds exciting. And what's that program going to be about?
Yep, staying safe at home. So lots of resources on how to make your home safe and bringing in home resources. Not just home care, but other resources that can really make sure that your loved one is cared for and safe in their home.
I think that's a great start. So even whenever people start down these care journeys, most of us are going to start at home. It's not always the catastrophic event where somebody has to move right away. Most of us have a desire to stay home, and it sounds like this could be a good program to help us stay there.
Yeah, my dad stayed home. It was his wishes. It was my mom's wishes. It was like just trying to figure out what the resources are that we could afford and worked for him. And so, yeah, it's near and dear to my heart for sure.
I love that. Well, Kelly, thanks so much for joining us today. I appreciate you sharing a little bit about Oasis as well as ACAP. We're huge fans of ACAP. I think that it's the kind of resource that did take about a year or a little bit more to get started. But it's going to be a huge advantage to residents of Cherokee and Cobb that can come in, get a little fellowship with other people that are going through similar things, but also get the education in a non-sales environment.
Absolutely.
So often whenever you go to a seminar or things like that, there's really people trying to sell you stuff. It's like a hidden sales pitch. And that's not what ACAP is.
Not at all.
It's really a resource. It's a nonprofit charity to help people in the community.
Yeah, we're excited. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Kelly.